report. For the first half of today's broadcast, we celebrate the life of Odetta.
When my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call, hold my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home.
The legendary blues, folk, and gospel singer Odetta. From September 11th, 2002. She was performing here in our Firehouse studio on Democracy Now!'s broadcast marking the first anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. Odetta died on December 2nd at the age of 77. She's been described as the voice of the civil rights movement. In 1963, she performed the song "O Freedom" at the March on Washington. Odetta inspired a generation of musicians, including Bob Dylan and Joan Baez. Dylan once said, "The first thing that turned me on to folk singing was Odetta." When Rosa Parks was asked which songs meant the most to her, she replied, "All the songs Odetta sings." Harry Belafonte once said, "Odetta is a vast influence on our cultural life." Considered the queen of American folk music, Odetta introduced audiences worldwide to American roots music, and especially African-American folk, blues, and gospel. As a major voice in the American civil rights movement, she marched with Dr. Martin Luther King in Selma, sang for the masses in Washington in 1963, and performed for President John F. Kennedy at a civil rights presentation on national television. She shared the stage with Paul Robeson, with Nina Simone, with Pete Seeger, and many others. She was reportedly planning on performing at President-elect Barack Obama's inauguration next month. To remember Odetta today, we're joined by another major cultural figure to come out of the civil rights era, Dr. Bernice Johnson Reagon, original member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the SNCC Freedom Singers, and founder of the all-woman African-American a cappella group Sweet Honey in the Rock, which continues to perform today. She's currently Professor Emeritus of History at American University and Curator Emeritus at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. Dr. Reagon joins us from Washington, D.C. Dr. Reagon, welcome to Democracy Now!
Good morning. Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you with us. Can you remember when you first saw Odetta?
Yes, in 1961 in Albany, Georgia, in December, in the period of 1 week, over 700 people were jailed. It was the largest arrest of American citizens in the history of the country. As a result of that, I was a student leader of the beginning freedom movement in Albany. I was suspended from Albany State College and received a scholarship, a full scholarship, to continue my studies at Spelman in Atlanta. Howard Zinn was on the faculty there, and Howard and Roz Zinn took me to my first folk singing concert. It was Joan Baez. And at that time, I'd heard about folk music. There was the Hootenanny. And so I liked Joan Baez. Then they said, "We want you to come to another folk singing concert." And the the singer is wonderful. Her name is Odetta. And I said, Odetta what? And they said, she just goes by the name Odetta. So she sang at the gym at Morehouse College, spring 1962. And I'm sitting there, and out on the stage comes this black woman. Her hair was cut in a short afro. She had a guitar. And she said, prettiest strain that I have ever seen. Pop! And she hit the guitar. Now, in the course of the concert, she also played the guitar, but she slapped the guitar. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. In Georgia, where I grew up in the country, the roads were built by chain gang labor. I knew the sound because as the men worked, they sang. But I never thought I'd hear it coming from a concert stage. The next thing that happened, which was defining for me, is she sang Joshua Fit the Battle of Jericho. Every black person I knew in my life knew Joshua Fit the Battle of Jericho and all of the verses. It was a part of what made you know you were black. And I sat up because I was listening to a folk singer. And at that minute, I said, oh, if Odetta's a folk singer and Joan Baez is a folk singer, then folk music doesn't really define what I am hearing. And it was then I understood folk music to be a body of music that comes out of a cultural offering that is so close to you, it names who you are. So Odetta, one, defined in a usable way for me what folk music was, in a way that let me know I didn't have to leave where I was to go learn some new songs, to be a part of this movement. The other thing was she was a black woman, and the way she used her voice was totally unique to the concert stage. One of the things that happens sometimes when you take root music and take it to the concert stage, something happens to it. You recognize it, but it's been sort of shifted a bit. And Odetta did shift these songs because these are songs that are work songs. But when she sang prison songs or work songs, she still rendered the passion, the energy, and the position and the function that those songs created for the people who sang them as a way of balancing their lives. She was just the spring of '62, what I needed to begin my life as a freedom fighter and as a freedom singer.
Bernice Johnson Reagon is with us in Washington. Odetta was interviewed for the National Visionary Leadership Project in 2003. She was asked about the role of folk music in her life.
Learning of folk songs and the stories that came along with the songs, which was the history of us and was definitely not in our history books. And I've often said it straightened my back and kinked my hair. And I remember a play aunt of ours saying, when are you going to get your hair back to natural? I said, if you'd like to rephrase that question. And I was walking around the country singing and feeling very good about it. And whenever I needed it cut, I go into a barber shop wherever I was. And if the barber looked like he questioned it, I all of a sudden thought of an appointment to go to. Because once you cut it, there's nothing you can do about it. Yes. Okay. If the barber was fascinated with it, then I'd have him cut my hair. And what is called an afro or natural It was used to be called an Odetta. And the songs that got to me the deepest were the prison work songs. I could sing those songs and no one would know where I began and the prisoner ended, right? We weren't in a place where we could discuss and talk about anything. And we certainly wouldn't say, I hate you and I hate me and I'm, okay. So it was an excellent purging thing for me. And I remember when I first started,